All right, guys, we're back again. Another episode of Understory Unfiltered. We've got the entrepreneur of all entrepreneurs with us today. A very special entrepreneur who's built multiple businesses at a very young age, done it super successfully, famously in his tagline on LinkedIn, 10 million plus in agency profit since what was it, 2020 or 2021?
2019.
2019. But we've got Eli. Is your last name Rubel or Rubel? It's a
Ruble.
hot topic. Rubel.
Ruble.
So we've got Eli Rubel, founder and CEO of MatterMade, founder and CEO of Profit Labs, founder and CEO of No Boring Design. Previously had some other businesses. Currently, the newest venture is Profit Labs, which we're going to want to talk a lot about. But yeah, Eli, I just gave you an introduction, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about you, from the horse's mouth.
Man, what an introduction. It's hard to follow that, Alex. Thanks for having me on the show. It's nice to be with you guys. I've got a weird background, guys. I was like an art school dropout, went into tech, started a software company. It was a horribly wonderful failure, by Silicon Valley standards. Our dogs are going nuts. But I managed to sell it, for what was a life-changing amount for me at the time. And that really opened a lot of doors for me, and bought an e-commerce business, tinkered with that for 4 years, turned it around, sold it to a private equity firm. And then at that point I realized I was tired of chasing like big swings. Basically, I had been very egoically driven as a young 20 something. I wanted to take a company public and, be known or whatever. And once I got closer to 30, I started to think more about wanting to have a family and wanting to be a dad. And suddenly my ambitions around business shifted pretty meaningfully to being more focused around lifestyle balance and like, how do I make the most money possible with the least amount of time invested? I've since started a bunch of agencies. You mentioned them. And along the way, most recently discovered I have a passion for helping other agency owners or digital service business owners, make their businesses serve them and be as profitable as possible so that they can also have the lifestyle unlock that I've enjoyed.
Makes sense. A question for you too that I've been curious about for a while. So obviously, you wanted to shift more towards this lifestyle type of business. And I shouldn't even call it a lifestyle business because you have very successful businesses, but where you had a better work-life balance and you weren't chasing for this billion-dollar acquisition or going public or something like that. Do you think that the initial exit you had with your first SaaS company put you in that mindset, or do you think you would have been in that mindset regardless, and whether or not you had that at the time life-changing exit?
That put me in the mindset of lifestyle balance
Yeah, like I
or
don't need to focus on this billion-dollar company anymore. Like I'm
no,
comfortable.
I mean, no, because I mean, shit, by the time you pay the lawyers and by the time you pay taxes and by the time that all shakes out, and your VCs make their money, on a small acquisition, it was like $3 million acquisition. So I think I brought in like, it's like 1.2 or 1.3 personally pre-tax, right? So as a single dude in my early 20s, that was, a lot of money. And as a person who now has two kids and two dogs, not that the dogs are that expensive. I'm like looking around, seeing what around me it's costs
You're
money.
spending like $150 a month on dog food. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just like life gets really expensive really quickly. And so that by no means is like I can kind of chill now and it's just all for fun. I think that number has to be probably 10 to 15x. Actually, I know the exact number. It's like 14x that initial number is the I can totally chill now number. So I still had 14 more times to do that before the chill kicks in.
Which brought you in? Oh, go ahead, Ollie.
I was just gonna say, did you raise for that first venture? Eli?
I did, yeah. I think we raised a little over $1 million. So
Okay,
just
and
seed
that was
round.
like a seed round. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I'd be curious to hear. I know there's a lot to talk about, but just in the modern landscape, what's your view on raising money? I feel like bootstrapping is the way, and my guess is that you'd be super for bootstrapping, but I'd love to hear your take on like what the modern approach or what you'd recommend like a founder do in this day and age.
I think VCs are fucked. That's my hot take for this call.
Tag on.
Yeah, like look, especially with all the stuff that's happening, I was chatting with a buddy of mine who's a very senior engineer. He was a super senior engineer at Slack, and now he's had an incredible journey as an engineer. Um, and my younger brother is like a math and comp sci PhD who is writing algorithms that you know Google's using to power the AI. I'm actually not that versed in all this stuff, so already talking over my skis. But anyway, smart engineer guys. I was chatting with them about all this stuff, and it's incredible to hear how much of their work is influenced, especially the one who's not my brother, because they're like at the very writing the stuff that powers the other stuff that powers the stuff that people are actually using. But for my buddy who's an engineer within startups, so much of their code is like assisted by AI at this point. So I can't imagine a world where you would need to raise money to build an MVP to get your first couple of customers. And then if you've already done that, like fuck the VCs, just bootstrap the thing. Like you use the money from the customers, grow slowly at first, and then you're just going to have so much more leverage. Go get a fucking line of credit. I know there are a lot of different ways you could do it where you're not selling your soul to people that you're going to make a bunch of money for, and they're going to tell you what to do and eventually fire you. And that's not even like, I had a wonderful experience with RVCs. So I say that with like a lot of fire, just because I fundamentally think it's stupid to give away the farm when you don't have to anymore.
Yeah,
Do you
and
feel?
go ahead.
Yeah, go for it. No, you go
I
for
was
it,
just
Alex.
gonna say, like, I feel like this is a trend that's picking up more and more. And then you've got guys like Adam Robinson on LinkedIn that are kind of like pioneering this bootstrap first
Yeah.
mentality. And I mean, we're bootstrapped. We're entirely bootstrapped. You've obviously built 3 successful bootstrapped businesses since, right? It's like, you know what it's like to be bootstrapped. It's one, you don't have the overlords breathing down your neck saying you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to go up market, you need to start selling enterprise deals, you need to hire a sales team and 26 more engineers, like things like that. You don't have that. And I think people underestimate how much money it is, even if you're making $500,000 a year, in profit. Like $500,000 a year goes a long way in income.
Yeah.
And you don't
Yeah.
have to have a big business to get to $500,000 a year in income. Like you can get to 100K a month and be making more than that, you know?
Totally. Well, and all the dynamics have changed, right? Like if you flash back to 2010, engineers were like the golden goose, right? Everybody was trying to hire the best engineering talent. Engineers comp was like through the roof and insane. So you had this really high bar of, if I want to build a product, I need these engineers and they cost a lot of money and they're in demand. And then, at the same time, the time that it would take to build was also a lot longer. Whereas now, I'll just give you a personal example. So normally my life is very regimented, but for 7 blissful days, my wife and kids went back to Denver, left me up at our cabin. I love my wife and kids, but sometimes it's nice to have a little break. And I was up here like managing a construction project. It was too dusty for the kids, so they went back to town. And I was like, this is my opportunity to mess around with AI stuff. So I vibe coded from like 6 a.m. till 1 a.m. every single day, 7 days straight. Vibe coded a product that I'd like desperately wanted for all of my agencies and couldn't find. Like I spent probably a week looking for this tool back in the day when I sat with my head of ops and was like, there's got to be a way to collect customer feedback where you take and deliver, like we're, agency business. We're always sending decks or content, things to review. We're always sending links to our clients of deliverables. So there's got to be a way to gate that with a survey so that you can create a moment where the client wants to get behind the survey. So they'll fill it out. They don't mind. It makes sense. Feedback is good for everybody. And I couldn't find the tool. I was blown away. I couldn't find the tool. Like literally the best solution out there is go use Typeform or go use SurveyMonkey and hound the client, give them the link, say, hey, we'd really appreciate you giving us some feedback, and hound them to fill it out. Most of the time they ignore it and they respond to everything else in Slack except for the request for feedback. And so, yeah. And then you degrade the relationship with the client, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I was like, this is a perfect project for me to experiment with coding. built the thing. She was blown away that it actually worked and got our first paying customer. This was just, I built it for my own agencies, but then I was so blown away that with how well it was working that I put up a marketing page and sent the link out to a couple of agency people. And we had our first paying customer through Stripe in 7 days, 7 days later. So that's an example of like the product that I built in 7 days was more complicated and more fully featured than Glider, the startup that I started that was venture funded after 6 months of engineering work with a full-time team of engineers back in the day and $1 million in the bank to do it. So it's just different times.
Yeah, times have absolutely changed. I mean, similar to that, I vibe coded a tool that we actually use every single day, like 8 times a day, 10 times a day. It's just a pre-call prep. So it does agentic research on prospects based on their domains and excludes understories domain. Comes back with basically a research prompt or a research brief on everyone before we speak to them. So I don't have to go and look things up before we have all these sales calls.
It's awesome.
And I built that in probably a matter of 8 hours. I made a LinkedIn post about it. I had over 10 people ask me if they could get access to it and pay for it. I never
Yep.
set up a Stripe link. I never did any of that. I never set up a payment gateway. So no customers, but it's like I have 10 people waiting who would pay probably 20, $30 a month for it. So it's like, it's pretty crazy. That took me 8 hours to build max. And it's like, I
Yep.
showed my butt. So Ali and I have a really good friend who's like an AI software engineer at Meta. He's actually in the super intelligence unit now at Meta, working for Alexander Wang after the acquisition of Scale. And I showed him this, and he was like, "You'll never get that to work with OAuth." And I was like, "No, try it out. You can OAuth into it right now." And he was just like, "No way. How did you build that?" And I was like, I told it to build it, and I followed the instructions that it gave me." And he was like, "Man, I might be out of a job."
Yeah, dude.
So he's not going to be out of a job. Like, they do a totally different thing. They're the ones actually doing the pre-training and building the models that we're using to do stuff like that. But yeah, it's different. It's like I feel like you're going from a ton of $400,000 a year engineers to now you're getting like NFL sized offers. Right? So you get these 150, $250 million packages that Mark Zuckerberg is giving out to people. And it's like a totally different ball game we're playing these days.
Yeah. It's it's an interesting time to be in business, to be alive. I think for a while there, I was intimidated by it and kind of nervous about what it was going to do for the industry. And a buddy of mine shared this perspective where he's just like, dude, you don't get to choose what cycle you're born into. And what an interesting ass cycle to be born into. Like, we're going to see some crazy, like our kids, like I was at a dinner last night with our neighbor and we were talking about like, oh yeah, what school district, how good are the schools where you live? And the dad was like, bro, I don't even know, like, are we going to be sending our kids to school?
I
And
think
then we
about that
started
all the
joking
time.
about how it's like schools in 10 years from now, like middle school is going to be, or high school, it's just going to be like a co-working space. And you're choosing like the nicest co-working space where they all log into the same like universal teaching platform. And, fucking, I don't even know. It's probably going to be crazier than that. But
For
yeah,
sure.
I digress.
No, it feels like seeing a super early example of like the light bulb or something like that. Like just like a complete revolution in what we're doing. It's so exciting. We actually had Santosh Sharan on a couple weeks ago, and he actually said because of tools like Lovable, all these things, like the fact that you can create new software products like overnight and set up Stripe links, and there's just an explosion of new technology. He basically said it's the golden age of agencies right now because somebody needs to weed through all of the new tools that are being created and actually see what's working. I'm curious to hear your take on that, Eli. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts, but he said literally he thinks it's the golden age of agencies right now because there are so many tools and somebody has to find what's working and weed through those.
Yeah, I think there's something there for sure. Um, I mean, I remember it was a couple of years, it was like 2 years ago when all the AI stuff was starting to become more than a murmur. And I said to my wife on a car ride, I was like, if I was starting an agency from scratch right now, it would be a teach bigger businesses how to leverage the new AI stuff that's coming out and like how to use it. And since then, I think that is becoming the new like social media marketing equivalent of our time, right? Of right now. Whereas in 2010, 2015, like all the YouTube annoying people were like, I'm going to teach you how to get rich with social media marketing. I think now it's going to be like, I'm going to teach you how to get rich by starting an agency that teaches other people how to build agents, you know? And whether it's annoying or not, like I think there's a lot of money to be made there for sure still. And there will be for a while.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think they're actually delivering a ton of value. I mean, we don't do exactly that, but it's like part of what we do. But like the value is insane. It sounds like shit. I hate saying this publicly, but it's just like a reality that we're all
Yeah.
witnessing in real time. But we replace people. Like the stuff that we build replaces people, and it sucks to say out loud because people literally do lose their jobs from workflows that we build. But at the same time, it's making businesses more efficient, and I think it's forcing an upskilling of the entire labor force. Like the entire workforce has to upskill because jobs aren't going to go away. More jobs will be created. It's just different jobs, new jobs, higher skill jobs. And then I think obviously more and more people will go into blue collar work again, which is probably good for the world too. But yeah, it's like it sucks, but at the same time it's actually great for the workforce what we're doing and what those agencies are doing, and they're actually contributing so much value. So it's like what's going to happen though, there's going to be a shift in wealth, right? There's going to be ultra wealthy people that are building these insane businesses like ours, but times 10, times 100, times 200, times 1,000, right? It's like people who are building billion-dollar businesses with 10, 15 people and getting absolutely fuck you rich. It's like
Yeah.
you're seeing it with like the Gammas, the Lovables, Cursor, like all these companies out there. They're already doing it, but it's like all we're doing is contributing to that trend. But I mean,
Yep.
it's a pay to play game, but if you can pay to play, you can win huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of where my head's at with this, but I do want to shift in some stuff that I think is really valuable for our audience. Your resume is crazy, man. You've built a lot in a very short amount of time. I mean, you're under 40 and you've already exited one business. You've built 3 successful agencies that you're still running to this day. MatterMade. Honestly, Ali knew about you before I knew about you. Ali, when I told him we were talking, he was like, "Oh my God, I used to see Eli all the time when he was doing MatterMade in like 2020, 2021." And you're super well known. I mean, you have some crazy logos. I think you worked with Dropbox, Loom, Oracle, Yelp, like huge companies, right? And you and I have talked about this privately, but you said there was like a golden age in 2020, 2021 where you were like the industry darling. You scaled this thing up like crazy, made a ton of money doing it, and it's still operating to this day. It's like, talk to us about what got you into MatterMade, why paid media, how'd you pick that niche, how'd you get started, what did you scale it to, how is it still operating, and how did that lead you into the next venture, which is No Boring Design, and how did you use No Boring Design as kind of a hedge against what was happening with MatterMade? And then we'll get into what shifted you all the way into Profit Labs.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so that we'll flash back to our conversation earlier where, I had this epiphany of I don't want to, I want to work as little as possible and make as much as possible. And I no longer want to chase this egoic business, aspirational self, whatever. And that realization came, a friend of ours had just gone through Berkeley has a program for executive coaching, and she had just gone through that program and was looking to practice basically. And she knew that I was in between things and banging my head against a wall, trying to figure out what was next. And so I went and met with her in her office, and we got on the whiteboard and we devised this idea that was called the tricycle life. And it was like a vision in my head of, it's the middle of the work week, it's a Wednesday at whatever, 11 in the morning, and I'm chasing my kid down the street, they're on the tricycle, and there's a tree lined street, and everything's beautiful, and like I don't have to be anywhere, and I'm in control of where I am, and I'm where I want to be. So that became the seed of inspiration for me for what came next, which was MatterMade. So with that, I said, okay, an agency seems like, well, what is my skill set? My skill set is, I don't really have a skill set. And that was actually something that plagued me for a really long time until I had enough success that I was like, okay, I have a skill set. But it's a non-conventional skill set. But at the time I still felt like I had no skill set. And I was like, okay, well, I went to art school. So I'm a creative person, and marketing is creative. So a buddy of mine actually, who became one of our largest clients later. Uh, I was asking for advice, and he goes, you have to pick something. You have to tell people that you're good at something and like make that your thing. Otherwise, people don't know how to help you or how to be in your ecosystem. They need something to cling on to. So I picked marketing. I'm like, okay, I'm a marketer, and decided, I know that my skill so far has been I'm good at hiring people who are smarter than me, who are more credentialed than me. So I'll be a marketer. I'm a B2B marketing guy, but I'm going to go hire people who are actually much better at that than I am. And I used to say this all the time. I don't actually believe it is true anymore, but like, I'm a lazy guy. I don't like working. So I'm really good at hiring people to do the work and like doing the puppet thing up at the top and moving the chess pieces around. So I did that. I went and hired somebody that I'd always looked up to as a B2B marketer, and started shaking my network from the VC world, and slowly but surely built up a book of business. And it took a while. I mean, there was like a period of time where I felt like I was just banging my head against the wall and really slow goings. I think the first 3 to 6 months felt that way. And then it started to pick up pretty quickly. So we grew that business and actually I'll even go into a little bit of detail I don't normally go into. Originally, I didn't want any employees. I thought it was just going to be me. I thought it'd be cool to be like a marketing advisor where I just have like 16 clients. They each pay me $2,500 a month. And I think my goal was $40,000 a month initially, where I thought like, I can't imagine a world ever where I need more than $40,000 a month. So like, why complicate my life with employees? I'll just back into this through these little advisory things. I think I signed my first 2 advisory clients and was like, fuck this. I don't want to do any client work. And so that's when I hired the other dude, and we hit the 40K a month goal within the first 6 months of the business. And then we hit 7 million in net profit within the first 3 years of the business.
Which is insane, by the way.
Yeah, it was a crazy run, but I have to give a lot of the credit, candidly, to the time. Like so much of this, whether you're in an agency or you're in software or whatever, like has so much to do with timing. And like, yes, you have to show up with your surfboard and like put yourself in the wave. And yes, you have to like have decent balance once you get in it and make some good decisions to stay in the barrel. But I've never made a surfing analogy, but that was kind of fun. But like, you could do everything right at the wrong time and have little to no success, or you could do some things right at the perfect time and have a shit ton of success. And so I think I fell into that. Like, I had enough hustle and grit, and I fell into a really great time where we were able to peak out in 2021 at 4.2 million in EBITDA that year. But then, as a testament to timing, like when the market crashed at the end of 21 going into 22, so did my business. Like, I was still, it wasn't that I had stopped making good decisions, or that I suddenly like went from being a great entrepreneur to a shitty entrepreneur. It was just like the timing shifted, and now it's like shitty time in tech. So yeah,
and I think that's super important, by the way, to think about for anyone listening to this too. Like, we haven't had the same level of issues in terms of financial cycles or things like that. But even, I don't even remember, the times all blend together. But like, there was a period maybe a year ago, something like that, where the market completely tanked. And it was when Trump first came into office. I think it was the tariff announcement, like the first time, that type of thing, where everything just tanked. And we saw our pipeline not dry up, but certainly go from being extremely robust to a little bit tighter. And Ali and I were talking about it. And we're like, maybe these macro effects are really having a toll on our business. And like, thankfully, it was short lived and we came out of it pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, I think cycles are so important, especially when it comes to tech, because tech is so heavily reliant on VC funding and external funding. And when the well dries up, budgets dry up from all of these companies. And as an agency, hits you hard.
Totally. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm really good at cutting people off. So go ahead.
Felt good. Felt right.
Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about how MatterMade also pivoted into no boring design. You went to art school. You run a design agency as well. That one you said is already taken off, and you guys are having a lot of great success there, working with some really cool companies. So talk to us
Yeah.
about how that, I guess, cyclical downturn forced you to pivot into that.
Yeah. So if we flash back to the headspace of MatterMade 2021, I was flying high. I was already shopping the business with private equity firms, and like I could practically taste the retired win in my mouth. And back then multiples were crazy. Like at 4.2 in EBITDA, the conversations I was having were, okay, we can trade at 7 to 8x, and our forecast for that business was 7 million in EBITDA um, by the end of 22. And they're like, if you can get there, you're going to trade in the low teens. So like not an insignificant amount of money if we're talking in like the 40 to 80 million dollar exit range. And like multiple conversations were validating this for me. So I was like, oh, it's as good as done. I know I'm going to hit that 7 million number, like come rain or shine. Well, rain came and I didn't hit that number. So it was a really massive emotional rug pull for me. I mean, I went from that, like, this is a done deal and I'm crushing it headspace with a 40-person team to I had to cut the team down to 5 people, and we're losing money overnight. So it was definitely the hardest time in my career. I was super depressed, and just like my sense of identity had gotten tied up in the success that I was having. And I had to like painfully and slowly untangle that and kind of come to terms with that truth. Um, and that took me a really long time. But so in the process of, to get to NBD, in the process of cutting the team back, we had 2 designers on staff who I really, really like. I mean, I really liked everybody on the team, but they were some of the last people to be cut. And before I cut them, I was like, okay, I wonder if there's a way where I could get some freelance design projects for them to keep them employed, because I don't want to have to go through the process of like rehiring them. Um, so I started to think about it, and I developed a hypothesis that all of these tech companies that were our clients had just finished firing anything non-essential. So a lot of the agencies got cut. Um, and what else is not essential? Most CEOs think design is not essential. So I had a theory that probably most designers were getting fired too. And then my theory was, okay, if that's the case, what's going to happen is the CEO in 3 months' time, the CEO is going to go to the marketing team and be like, hey, why aren't we getting new creative? Why aren't our campaigns going live? Why do they look stale? They look like the same campaign you just launched. And then the marketing leader is going to go, well, that's because you just fired a designer 3 months ago, or something in a more tactful way than that. Um, and so I figured at that point, I knew that there would be a hiring freeze. So they're not going to be able to rehire their designer. So what does that mean? They're going to go look for freelance or agency level, like flexible agency support for design.
Yep.
So that was the hypothesis. I went to the most senior designer of the 2 and said, hey, like, here's the situation. I want to like fight and try to make this work. Can you, like, let's come up with a brand over the weekend and launch it like a website on Monday. And I'm going to give this like the old college try and see what we can do. And so over the weekend, he created a brand. We launched the site the next week. And within, I think it was like 2 months, it was a profitable new business. Not wildly profitable, but like it was paying for their salaries and making a little bit of money on top of it. And so I was like, great, okay, we can do this. That business grew a lot more quickly than I thought it would. And now it's actually bigger than MatterMade, which is crazy. And it pulled me through the shitty times. It gave me something to focus on. It gave me something creative, like a creative endeavor to create something. So it was almost therapy and a good diversification when the times were tough for MatterMade.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm curious also on pricing. So you were talking about kind of having the fractional design work rather than the internal person that they just fired, right?
Yep.
How much did that go into your pricing? Because we've talked a little bit about your pricing on No Boring Design, because we almost hired you guys to do a website rebuild for us. We still might at some point. But with that said, you guys have like an hourly pricing, or like so you can kind of do it on demand ad hoc, right? And then you guys also have the tiered pricing where it's like, or maybe it's sorry, project based versus also like a
Retainer.
subscription. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how much did that factor into the pricing model?
How much did what factor in the pricing model?
The thought process of they just fired somebody, they're going to want someone
Oh,
fractional. What makes us different if we just basically have them put us on a salary?
yeah. So initially, the model was, I mean, back in the day, it's like anything. Whenever I've started an agency, I start, well, actually, I screwed this up with Profit Labs. I had to walk it back with the pricing and packaging and all that. We can get in that later. But initially, I think I was charging $1,000 a month flat rate for unlimited design with a designer,
Hmm.
which is wholly not sustainable. Like if anybody's charging you $1,000 a month, they're probably design pickle, and you are going to get whatever
You're going to get
they
design pickle. Let's just say
you're
it
going
how
to
it
get
is.
design pickle. Exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, but initially that was like, oh, we can make this work. And then very quickly we ratcheted that price up. I think now our baseline price is 6,500 a month. But it took us a long time of figuring out like how much value do we need to deliver and how can we service that value such that 6,500 makes a lot of sense for the right
Yep.
type of buyer. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think back in 22, $1,000 a month to make the CEO happy was an easy amount of money to get approved, as opposed to whatever a designer costs,
Yep.
in salary plus benefits plus taxes, all that jazz.
Yeah, I think we struggled with pricing at the beginning too. I mean, we're always figuring it. I feel like pricing is such a dynamic thing as an agency.
Yeah.
But like when we first started, this is actually a really funny story. So the way our business started, Ali was freelancing doing paid media work. I joined Ali and we built it into a real business together from like basically the ground up. But when Ali was freelancing, he had a client that was with us for the first year in business at $750 a month.
Yep.
$750 a month. So keep that in mind. It's Ali and myself, and then eventually we had a few employees as well, with a client that was paying us $750 a month. There was absolutely nothing coming from that. And but when that was your benchmark, it's like constant like, okay, let's progress from there. 750, let's try 1500. Work, no problem. No one batted an eye, right? 2500, no one batted an eye. 5000, okay, get a few objections here and there, right? 7,500, few objections here and there. It's like we get to where we are today, which is we've been stable. I've what 6, 8 months now in terms of pricing, something like that. But it took us a while just to like build the confidence to go up in pricing over and over and over again too. And it's such a dynamic thing because sometimes we'll say yes to a contract and we'll price it at our default pricing, and then we'll start doing the work and be like, we could have charged 3 times what we're charging, and they wouldn't have batted an eye for the level of work that we're doing for them, right? It's like we're replacing 8 people on their team right now. Imagine that in salaries,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like such a tricky thing as an agency to figure out pricing, especially with some of these newer markets, like go-to-market engineering, right? It's like a brand new thing. Varun from Clay invented it. And the work is super valuable, but nobody knows what to charge. So the range is so drastic. And I feel like now it's starting to stabilize. Like I feel like a lot of us are at very similar price points these days, which is good. I feel like if everyone's at a similar place, they compete based on skill level and experience versus just pricing. Because when you're competing on pricing, you're never going to get the right thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel. But it's such a tricky thing, and it's impressive to me that you figured it out with so many different business models, which makes me want to talk about Profit Labs too. So like the
Yeah.
entire thing you're doing now is helping agency owners figure that stuff out with data and understand what their numbers actually are, so they can understand revenue per client, profit by client, your growth rates, your EBITDA. I'll let you talk more about it, but I think that's such a valuable thing that you're building for agency owners because this is one of those things. It's like typically agency owners start an agency because they have a super high value skill. Like for Ali, it was paid media. For me, it was go to market engineering. We blended them together. But it's like we were first time business owners, really. Like, right? We didn't know how to handle all of the different CFO roles. So it's like these types of things have become so important to us because now we have the business figured out. This is the next step. So talk about it. Talk to us about what Profit Labs is actually doing, how you're helping agency owners, and how you learn from every mistake that you made to build it into what it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go back in history a little bit to the MatterMade days because this is where I first encountered the problem that ultimately I've set out to solve with Profit Labs. And It was the problem of exactly what you described. Like you go in as a subject matter expert or a first or second time business owner, and there's so much that's unique to an agency as opposed to any other SMB out there. You're having to load balance labor, you're having to price sensitivity test, and in some sense, other businesses also have to do things like that. But it's the way that you do it as an agency is very specific, and there's always fires, around you at all times. So it becomes really hard to keep these kind of core tenets in mind and experiment with these levers while also keeping the team stable and making sure that you're not overstaffed or understaffed. Um, and so at MatterMade back in the day, I remember we hired, like a bookkeeping firm and some financial support. And the problem was most bookkeeping firms and financial teams, like financial agencies that high agency owners will hire, are like they generically service SMB. So they're doing your financial planning, your books, your forecasting, but they're also doing it for like the baker down the street, or the Series A tech company, and their needs are so different that their offering just becomes generic and like, yes, your books are compliant, but you're not getting any insights. You're not getting help with future planning and scenario planning and modeling out like, okay, what happens if we increase our price by 20% in Q4 while simultaneously letting this person go because they're an underperformer, hiring these 3 people, which is going to be a strategic investment in this new service line, which we're going to raise the price of specifically by like an extra 15% on top of the overall 20%. And like there's just so many, there are all these levers, right? And if you're trying to make all of those decisions in your head or like back of the napkin math, which is what I was doing way back in the day and what I think a lot of agency owners end up doing, you just hope that your gut is right. And then you see what the results are after making all of those decisions. That's one way to do it. And it's the painful way. And like I said, I made a lot of mistakes along my career. And I think that was one of them, was just staying in that land of, making bets and hoping that they pan out as opposed to modeling bets and then
Yep.
choosing the best model and then executing against that model.
For
It's a lot
context, we're
less.
guilty of that ourselves. It's like
Yeah.
we come up with these awesome ideas and we're like, I don't know how this will be ROI positive, but I know it will be because I know this is a massive lever we can pull for all of our existing clients and then sell it in the future. And, I'm grateful these things have worked out for us so far, but it only takes you so far. It's like you really have to be able to model these things out, which is something that I'm really interested in talking to you further about. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you again. Once again, I'm bad
Yeah.
at that.
No, yeah, I completely agree. And I think that it also is one of the biggest stressors for agency owners. You're constantly ping ponging between, all of a sudden you're bringing in a bunch of business and now you're at capacity or close to capacity. So then you're scrambling to hire, and then
Oh,
and then you make the hires and suddenly like a client you weren't expecting to churns, and now you're like underutilized and the
yeah,
team's
you've
kind of
lived
sitting
this
there.
life. It's so clear
Dude.
you've lived this life. You know
Yeah.
exactly what it's like.
And so, yeah, so it's like, okay, like you can play that ping pong game, and that's a stressful fucking thing as an agency owner, but it helps to have some objective guardrails in place that are monitoring these things and like SOPs in place that dictate what happens if I have a rule of thumb where if a team or the whole agency, if they're underutilized by if they're below 75% utilization for more than 3 months in a row, then we cut the bottom performers. Like we do a 9-box analysis on the team, or we use the most recent 9-box analysis on the team, and we cut the bottom performers, or the low potential performers, whatever 9-box tells us to do, and we cut deep enough until we get the company back up to 85 or 90% utilization. Um, and without that framework, you're just kind of like, it sucks because especially when it comes to people, like it sucks to have to make that decision every time. You're like, oh man, we shouldn't, like, we can't, oh, I really don't want to cut again. Like, it is so emotional. So I think having systems in place where it's like, you're not making the decision. You make the decision once when you create the SOP, and then you're just executing against plan. And it's not you're not playing as much of a heartstrings game. It's never not going to suck to let people go, but we're in the business of service, which means we're providing someone else's time for a margin on top of that. And that's how we make money. And we're not in the business of running a charity. And so at some point, there has to be some financial rigor around things like that. Otherwise, you're doing a lot of work and a lot of heartache and a lot of headache for not the right amount of return.
How are you measuring utilization? I'm just curious, like how you like breaking that down.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different ways that you can measure utilization. The way that we look at it is we decide on a certain number of billable hours that each team member should have, and that can be different based on the role. So like there's some amount of internal meetings that are going to happen. So we're not holding people accountable for that as part of their utilization. So we get to some sort of number. Let's say it's 140 hours a month of billable time, and then we have the team track their time. And as an aside, time tracking is one of these contentious things that in agency land shouldn't be contentious. Because again, like if your whole business model is marking up someone's time and selling it to someone else, regardless of if you're charging them hourly or you're charging them a flat rate, but internally you're keeping track of their hours, you have to track time. It's just like you can't be in. I just can't. It dumbfounds me when people are resistant to tracking time, and I think it comes from an employee mindset where they're like, well, I wouldn't want to, I hate the idea of having to track my time. So like, why would anybody else be willing to do it? It's like, it doesn't matter what they're willing to do. Like if they're not willing to do it, then they're gone. Like that's their choice. But if they want to be gainfully employed, like then they need to fall in line with the business's policies, and tracking time is one of those. That's the mean version. The nice version, which is true, is like, this is there to help the employee get what they need and advocate for themselves. Because if an employee comes to their manager and says, I'm drowning in work, please hire someone else, and they don't track time, then it's kind of like their word versus their manager's gut on the situation. And then the manager has to decide, like, do I trust this person? Is this person actually like working two jobs and they're just trying to like advocate for themselves so they can keep their workload chill? Or are they truly drowning? And if you're tracking time, then you can see like, oh, rather than even letting it get to the point where they come to you and they say they're drowning, you can see in the data, hey, I noticed that Isabel is like, her hours have spiked beyond what we consider to be threshold. Let's get in front of this. Let's open a rec. Let's hire some support. Let's go to her proactively and say, hey, we noticed you're grinding really hard. We want to acknowledge that. We also want to tell you what the plan is to prevent you from burning out and to prevent the client work from slipping. Because then the flip side of that is like, if you're not handling it that way and you're not planning in that way, then you're creating a situation where clients might churn because the customer experience goes downhill.
Yep.
But employees being employees, they're not going to want to like tell you that, because that means the perception is like they're not doing their job well enough that the client is unhappy. So then that's how you get blindsided by churn, right? Is that everybody's trying to keep it like we can manage it, and then boom, the client's just like, I'm pissed, sorry. So yeah, I went off on a couple of little rants there.
That's like incredibly insightful. To be honest, you kind of just opened my perspective on a lot of things. In particular, like Ali and I both run into this issue. In fact, recently we've run into this issue where people have come to us and they say like, hey, I am working till midnight every single night. They're getting their stuff done, but they're like, I'm working till midnight every night. Then Ali and I basically do an audit of the entire business and see, okay, what's everyone actually working on? But no one's tracking their hours internally at Understory. We don't do that. Maybe we should. But we'll go and audit accounts people are managing, the level of workload. We'll analyze Slack channels to see the level of back and forth, how many meetings are they having, things like that. And it's like, it's very obvious for us to see like, okay, it makes sense what this person is saying. They really are overworked. They're managing too much. We let it get to that because we didn't plan well enough in advance. But like, I totally see where this hourly tracking thing now could come into play. Because if someone's billing for 120, 140 hours a month, like you said, something like that, it's like very clear. It's like, okay, each account should take this many hours. You should be working this many. Are you hitting that? Boom. Right now, the way we do it is we just staff by account. But what ends up happening is when you staff by account, some accounts are obviously substantially more work than others.
Yep.
So it's like not all accounts are even. Long story short.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're standardizing the expectation to the client too. Like not just the employee or analyzing that, but when you're signing the contracts too.
Exactly.
So Eli, is your perspective all agencies should follow your model? There should not be anyone, like if you're doing arbitrage, like that's your business model, you should be tracking hours?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much upside to be had. And the only downside in having people track time is the communications challenge of making them see the light of like,
Like,
this is actually to help them. But then other than that,
yeah.
it's all upside. So,
Sounds like we should have a
Something to think.
conversation, Ollie.
Yeah, for sure. Something to think about.
Yeah.
because I mean, like just to even double down on the little rant, but like you can catch things that might not have otherwise been caught so easily. For example, let's say that somebody's non-billable hours are higher than you believe they should be, and then you look and you see, wow, all of our account managers or all of our project managers, whatever the role is, like they're spending a lot of time in internal meetings. Why is that? Like, oh, they have these standing calls that shouldn't be standing calls. What are they talking about on the standing calls? And so it's so much easier to diagnose. And especially, I mean, you guys will get this given, the GTM engineering, like, especially in this day and age where you could build an agent to help with something that maybe like we're actually going through this exercise right now at MatterMade where we're saying like, we actually haven't used much AI in that business at all, but we're now at a place where there are repetitive tasks that are, so we're looking for um, repetitive tasks that take a lot of time where the consequences are really low if like the agent doesn't do something right because there's going to be a human in the loop to like check it. Like, let's find all of those things. And because we track time, we're literally just like printing out, or the digital version of printing out the time tracking report, looking for patterns of where people are spending blocks of time, and then doing a little workshop on like, how could this be supported by technology? So I think time tracking is a huge assist. It like makes it much easier to go through exercises like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that thought process. Yeah, Ali, it's worth a conversation for sure. We'll talk about
Yeah,
it.
totally.
um, Eli, so I have kind of like a general question, but I think it's a really impactful one. So given that you own three operating businesses currently, like you're currently operating three businesses, something super interesting to me is that you share an executive leadership team across all three. You and I have talked about that. I think that's fascinating, first of all, because they're all very different businesses. Like technically they're all service businesses, right? I guess Profit Labs is a bit of a SaaS company too. But with that said, how impactful do you think it is to have the same executive leadership team that understands your thought process as a business owner to execute on behalf of all three businesses, despite them all being different?
I love that question. So to be totally transparent, this model is brand new to me. Like it was not even a year ago that I was brainstorming, like what do we do about this? Should I have separate leadership teams? Should I create a universal leadership team? And I decided on the universal leadership team because I don't know, I feel like it takes so long to recruit the right people and then to build the trust and then to learn each other's working styles, as you mentioned. Um, and I didn't want to go through that process again. I felt like I could build a lot faster if I can have these people like head of sales, head of ops, head of talent acquisition, etc., where we know how we operate. We can hop into a meeting, and yes, the context of the meeting is changing, but I mean the underlying things that, even though MatterMade and No Boring Design and Profit Labs, and soon to be SurveyGate, like even though all of these are different subject matters, it's like marketing, design and creative, agency finances, client feedback. It's all different subject matters, but like the motions are generally very similar, because they're all a similar delivery model. So then we're just solving the same problem all over again with like some different context surrounding it. So I think that the efficiency gains of keeping the same team is greater than the amount of time gain that you would have if you had a dedicated leadership team that was only focused on this one thing. It does come with its downsides though, and I'm frankly like I'm still weighing all of this out, and I don't know how far it can scale before, if you have a business that's like crushing it and taking off, and you have one that's not doing that, like, do you have that universal leadership team balance evenly? Should they lean more heavily into the business that they need to get like up to a higher standard, or should they lean more heavily into the business where it's already working? There are a lot of kind of interesting dynamics that frankly we're figuring out as we experiment with this model. But I will say so far, I've certainly liked being able to, I'm my full time focus is Profit Labs. So like that's my baby right now, and I own the other two businesses. So it's been really cool for me to not have to go out and hire a head of sales, hire a head of talent, hire a head of ops, and instead just like raise my hand, schedule a meeting, and have like my trusted crew that I've finished building the other businesses with, that I know they have the skill set, and just say, hey, like we're running into this problem all over again. Remember that from a year ago? Like what should we do? So
Yeah, exactly. That level of context is so critical. Ollie and I are trying to build that out now. I mean, we have a great leadership team, to be honest with you, and we're trying to just make them as independent as they possibly can be, and have them think like business owners as well. They're amazing. We're trying to build that same thing, but it's, yeah, finding someone you trust and finding someone with context and someone you can rely on over and over again as a business owner. There's no better peace of mind than that. So
yep.
I love that model, and despite the fact that I do think the context switching has got to be hard, it's a fascinating model to me, and I love that you're making it work.
Yeah, I'll report back a year from now and let you know
Yeah.
how what I
Well,
think
so
about it.
far, you've been successful so far, so I have no doubt
Yeah.
it's going to continue. But we're just about out of time here, but there's two questions we like to end with. And I think you're actually going to have great answers to this. So I'm pretty excited to ask you these. But number one, you have a wife, you've got two kids already, but 10 years from now, what's one sentence that'll define your legacy and help people understand the impact you've left on the world from a business perspective and from a personal perspective?
So I'm gonna make a joke and then I'll give you the real answer. The joke is I spent the last 2 years building this really crazy retaining wall up at our cabin. It's like a 150 linear feet, two 20-foot tall terraced retaining walls, and I know this thing is gonna live well beyond my years. So I think when I'm long and gone, my retaining wall will still be here,
The
which is
Great
pretty
Wall of
cool.
Rubel.
The Great Wall of Rubel. That's probably the thing I'll leave behind. No,
There you go.
realistically, like I'm not leaving a business legacy. I'm not leaving like a stamp on the business world at all. I don't. I'm not. I don't even know that I want to. I think the thing that I want to be remembered for is being a good dad, like being a good friend. Um, and if I can accomplish that, mm, I'm super super fulfilled by that.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone with kids and with a family would agree with you. I think that is the most important thing in life. But I also will challenge you there. I do think you're leaving an impact on the business world because you're inspiring a lot of entrepreneurs. You've done it successfully 3 times, and now you're helping other entrepreneurs do it successfully with Profit Labs. So I would push back on that and say I do think you're actually leaving an impact, and that's the reason we wanted you on this podcast in the first place. So don't be
I
so hard on
appreciate that.
yourself. Yeah.
I appreciate that, man.
And then also, what's the most important advice that you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur that you wish you had
Mm.
8 years ago, 10 years ago when you were first getting started?
This one for me is super. It comes really easily. Um, like just stay in the game. Just stay in the game, and it's all going to work out. I think if I look back on the cohort of people that I came up in the startup world with, and when I was 20 years old, and like looking at the people who stayed in the game, every single one of them has become successful, and like most of them have become extremely successful, and many of them a lot more successful than me. And the pattern there is they just stayed in the game, failure after failure after failure, whatever, small success after medium success after big success. Like they just kept at it, and they got their reps in, and eventually something clicked for them, or multiple things click for them, whatever it is. So I think it's don't be hard on yourself. Just trust the process. Trust that it is going to work out eventually. If big asterisks, you stay in the game. And I think that would be the advice that I would give to myself, because we spend so much time. I spent so much time in self doubt and in imposter syndrome and in like, oh man, like I missed the wave, or I missed the window, or if only I'd done this. And thankfully, I stayed in the game and I kept at it. But if I hadn't, like, then that would have become true. It was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I had told myself that story and then bailed and just gotten a job or something, then that would have been actually the true story. But yeah, so stay in the game and don't be
So
so
you
hard on
don't
yourself.
lose, you just quit.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. All right, well, Eli, this has been a ton of fun. I wish we had another hour, to be honest with you. But yeah, everyone should check out Profit Labs. especially if you own a small business like an agency. I mean, I've seen the demo, I've seen it live, and it's impressive stuff, and it really helps you understand exactly what your metrics look like. Check it out. Book some time with Eli. Spam his calendar, and yeah, Eli, I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Alex, Ali, this was fun. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.